The fact that the Civil War even took place is an oddity in itself. It's hard to imagine a more unlikely scenario than Americans fighting Americans, but occur it did. Following are some oddities and strange circumstances of that war. Maybe the soldier with the most combat experience during the war was George Barnhart Zimpleman. He was a private by choice and fought for the Confederates as a member of Terry's Texas Rangers. He participated in more than 400 battles and skirmishes, led his regiment in the number of horses shot out from under him, and suffered 2 wounds, one of which maimed him for life. Federal ordnance officials turned down the Spencer breech-loading rifle for use by the Union soldiers in 1860 and only got it to troops in quantity near the end of the war. The reason for refusing such a seemingly important armament? Soldiers would fire too fast and waste ammunition. Soldiers on both sides were quite inaccurate in their use of rifles. A Federal expert estimated that each Confederate who was shot required 240 pounds of powder and 900 pounds of lead. Two of the war's most famous and bloody battles were fought for odd reasons. Gettysburg was the result of soldiers needing shoes and being sent to the small Pennsylvania village to get them. Sharpsburg or Antietam because a Confederate officer wrapped 3 cigars with a vital army order. He carelessly dropped or discarded the cigars. The order was found by a Union soldier, and because of the intelligence gleaned, the usually cautious General McClellan was emboldened to attack General Lee's divided army. An eagle named Old Abe was the mascot of the 8th Wisconsin Regiment. Abe was brought to war by a member of the 8th who had traded for him with an Indian for 5 bushels of corn. The bird followed his master in camp like a puppy. In battle, Abe would soar aloft until the shooting stopped and then return to his regiment. In many instances, he would fly so high as to almost be lost to sight. Old Abe sustained 1 injury, but lived for 15 more years after the war in the Wisconsin State House, and subsequently a taxidermist mounted him. Today he is on display in the Wisconsin State Museum. Jack and Jasper Walker, brothers from North Carolina, fought for the South at the Battle of Gettysburg. Both were wounded in the leg, and each had a leg amputated and were sent to separate Federal prisons. They returned home after the war, each with a cork leg, and became prominent citizens. Jasper accidentally fell on his wedding day and borrowed his brother's artificial leg for the ceremony, the only known case of one brother being married on the leg of the other brother. Sergeant Henderson Vernon of Pea Ridge, Arkansas, joined the Confederate Army at the advanced age of 25 and served with the 2nd Arkansas. In March 1862, he found himself on familiar ground, fighting on his own farm in the Battle of Pea Ridge. He was wounded and taken into his own house, where his wife took care of him while he mended. During that convalescence, his wife conceived a son, Wiley, who fathered 8 children. One of those 8, Colonel John M. Vernon, served with the Flying Tigers in World War II. As for Grandpa Henderson, he survived the Civil War with a mini ball in his back and a huge scar on his chest. There was a water battle between the Confederate ironclad Arkansas and the Union gunboat Carondelet at the mouth of the Yazoo River in July 1862. The Arkansas ironclad could not be damaged by shells, but the Carondelet was able to pull beside the Confederate boat and board it. Once on board, they found that the rebel naval personnel had retired to the decks below and slammed the iron hatches, which left the Yankees with no one to fight. As a result, the battle was considered a draw. Although we have always been told that the Northern troops wore blue uniforms and the Southerners wore gray, that was not always the case. When the war began, Union troops often wore gray uniforms, which caused confusion in some early battles. The 3rd New York, the 1st Vermont, and most Indiana troops wore gray with black facing, strikingly similar to troops from Georgia. The 1st Iowa wore uniforms like the soldiers from Louisiana. Men from Maine, Kansas, and Nebraska wore gray. A New Jersey cavalry battalion wore blue and yellow and were known as the Butterflies. A Polish regiment from New York wore traditional Polish garb with square caps in bright red and white. Joseph Johnston, the Dean of Confederate Generals, surrendered many more men to General William Tecumseh Sherman near Durham, North Carolina, than Lee surrendered in Virginia. In the years after the war, Johnston served as pallbearer for several prominent Union generals, including Ulysses S. Grant. His last such service was for Sherman, his conqueror. Sherman's funeral was on a raw winter day, and Johnston contracted a severe cold, which went into pneumonia and caused his death. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, click on the bell for notifications of future videos, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.